Fort Worth family, is FortWorthFabian, BigBossFabo. I'm back with a video for you guys, man. I'm actually doing a reaction to VH1 Behind the Music, Guns N' Roses, man. I actually did a VH1 Behind the Music reaction to Journey a few days ago, so I definitely want to tap into doing more of these documentaries, so to speak. So let me know y'all's thoughts on this in the comment section below. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter at FortWorthFabian. This is the road to 1 million subscribers. If you haven't checked out the Journey reaction that I posted 2 days ago, go react to that. Or, go watch that video, go comment, like, share that video. With that being said, if you're new to the channel, subscribe to the channel. Check out the playlist page to get familiarized with what type of content I upload on the channel, man. This is a reaction form channel. We do a whole bunch of reaction content on the channel, so subscribe. With that being said, man, let's hop straight into the reaction. VH1 Behind the Music, Guns N' Roses. And if you have additional behind the music documentary recommendations for any artists, bands, or stuff I should get into, comment section down below, man. Let's get it. Let's go.
They were the baddest band on the planet.
Welcome to the jungle. We got fun and games.
We just didn't really give a about anything else going on around us. There was no holds barred.
They looked like outlaws. The music was like nothing I had ever heard.
Profane and powerful, Guns N' Roses rescued rock and roll with a unique sound built by life on the edge.
It was a 24-hour day party. Tupperware is full of cocaine.
I'd hear when I look over and Duff would be laid out on the stage, passed out.
Led by mesmerizing frontman Axl Rose, Guns N' Roses could inspire religious devotion, a riot, or both.
This is what we've been waiting for, right? This is like the real rock star lifestyle. This is the real rock star types. You know what I'm saying? So, of course, there's the cliche things that come. What's it like? Sex, money, rock and roll, or like there's other things. Sex, money, drugs, rock and roll. That's what it is. So, women.
Out to the stage, and they're shredding the place. The whole place just collectively destroyed everything.
It was insane.
Where do we go now?
And from day one, the Guns' greatest danger was to themselves.
I did everything I possibly could to try and kill myself.
I got a phone call saying Slash is dead. I mean, dead, blue dead. He had no pulse.
Fueled by non-stop drug abuse and outrageous egos, it took just a few years for the group to turn their guns on each other.
That's the sound of the band breaking up right there.
What song is that?
A band is a
What song is that one? Put it in the comment section below.
marriage, and they were bound for divorce court.
Guns N' Roses, the story behind the music.
Come on, buddy.
VH1 Behind the Music.
For those of you who don't live in New York, welcome to the jungle. Ladies and gentlemen,
Jimmy Fallon.
It's August 2002. In 7 years after the implosion of the world's most dangerous band, the reclusive Axl Rose finally emerges with Guns N' Roses at the MTV Video Music Awards. The band's name was familiar, but the faces were not.
A lot of people think it's almost sacrilege, to do it that way, but he doesn't give a hot.
Sick of this life.
Axl's hired guns bore no resemblance to the rock and roll outlaws that had enraged parents and enraptured fans in the 1980s. Their menacing sound fueled by lies of extreme decadence and danger.
Me and Duff were drinking at least a half gallon of vodka or Jack Daniels a day, just trying to sort of keep ourselves, you know, like on an even keel.
They lived it. And that's why, you know, they were one notch above everybody else. They were the real deal.
But Guns would ultimately choke on their own excess.
You were young and your heart was an open book.
Less than a decade after shocking the rock world with their seminal debut, Appetite for Destruction, drugs, booze, and runaway egos tore the band apart.
Everything was falling apart. Everything was wrong that was going on there. I mean, it was trouble after trouble after trouble, you know? It didn't stop.
You didn't know from 1 minute if it was going to end because of a drug overdose, because of a riot, because of it just imploding. But at the same time, you didn't know if that same day you were going to see the greatest musical performance of all time.
Guns N' Roses' rebellious roots were planted on the grimy streets of Hollywood in 1982. When two local misfits named Steven Adler and Saul Hudson, a.k.a. Slash, began amping up their hard rock dreams.
Steven started playing drums, and I started playing guitar, and we started a band. And that's where Guns starts for me.
In late '84, the struggling musicians checked out a band called Hollywood Rose at an LA gig. The group was fronted by Jeffrey Isabel and Bill Bailey, Indiana transplants who'd renamed themselves Izzy Stradlin and W. Axl Rose. To Slash and Steven, Axl's hypnotic performance was nothing short of magic.
After the show, I introduced Axl.
All right, so let me get this clear. The curly-headed guy is Slash, right? Because he referred to himself playing guitar, and Steven was the one on the drums. Or am I way off there? Somebody check me in the comment section down below, bro.
To Slash, and who knew that that was like history in the making, but that was the first time Slash met Axl.
I said to Slash, if we get that singer and that guitar player, we'll have a kick-ass band.
By March of '85, Steven and Slash had joined forces with Axl Rose and Izzy Stradlin. That same month, bassist Michael Duff McKagan cemented the lineup. They called themselves Guns N' Roses.
We went through so many different people, and this ended up being the people that we most believed in. We're like a family. We believe in each other.
We were a gang. That's how we thought of ourselves. We play rock and roll music to kick your ass.
Guns were finally cocked and loaded. And their combustible onstage chemistry quickly offered a dangerous alternative to make-up metal groups like Cinderella and Poison.
Who? AKA they blew them off the market. Who? Cinderella story? What'd they say? I mean, Poison sound familiar, but...
All these other bands, you know, they had all these spandex and makeup and crap. And we didn't. We just went out there and played rock and roll.
Ah, what's up?
They looked like outlaws, that was number one. And the music was, to me, like nothing I had ever heard.
We just didn't really give a shit about anything else going on around us. We just had this edge, this sort of unpredictable, scary thing about what it was that we did, and that there was no holds barred.
And from the beginning, Guns' hunger for success was matched only by their appetite for excess.
Quite often, it was a 24-hour day party. Tupperwares full of cocaine. Literally Tupperwares. Everybody was completely strung out and using ecstasy.
Nobody drank as much as Slash, and nobody passed out as much as Slash.
We were just following in the footsteps of all the guys that we grew up, you know, were our heroes growing up. And then we just took it that one step further.
You got to get lit on tour. I mean, he made a good point. Looks like he was just looking up to certain people. You wonder, like, why is alcoholism and drug abuse part of the rock star lifestyle? When really your profession is artistry. You're a musician. You're on the road. You should be probably as professional as possible. But it's like it's a part of an image that you have to upkeep. You know, you got to be wild. And he just even said himself, he, you know, basically like the forefathers he looked up to were kind of on the same thing. So it's part of, it's like a trend type thing. You know what I'm saying? So in actuality, though, you want to be on point and on cue, right? Because you're presenting yourself a certain way. But I don't know. Maybe that's not even, Guns N' Roses is Guns N' Roses just for the same reasons, you know, everything they partook in, so to speak, is what I'm trying to say. So I can't really say too much on that. But point being is interesting because it's only like really the rock stars. It's the rock star lifestyle. Nowadays, rock stars don't really exist like that. That's kind of a dying breed. But hip hop's become like the new rock. You know what I'm saying? Now hip hop stars are like super big. They're rock stars. They're pop stars. And even in part of that, even in that lifestyles is heavy drug abuse. You know what I'm saying? Things like that. But it's a party lifestyle. Who wouldn't want to turn up 24/7 while visiting different countries, maybe different parts all over the country, you know, in the States, but going overseas, you know? So come on, man. Like,
Really homeless and constantly
they can't really help it.
Migrating from one squalid crash pad to another. Guns were single-minded in their pursuit of just two things: partying and rock and roll.
These guys were living off of biscuits and gravy from Denny's, you know, from friends.
There was usually at least a few bodies on the floor that you had to step over when you walked in. There was always a song written on a pizza box and empty liquor bottles everywhere.
We were always scrounging to find a place to practice.
Hey, at least they were being productive, right? They wrote a song on every pizza box. Interesting. So they're lit the whole time. They're being productive. They're creating music. Genius. You know what I'm saying? The creative mind doesn't really have any limits. It has no boundary. That's why, you know, a lot of artists, they partake a little bit, you know, they do drugs, they experiment because their creative mind transcends a lot of boundaries. You know, they don't like to limit themselves in the physical nature, in the physical realm. Creatives have a deep and vast mind. You know what I mean? That's why a lot of them are very intellectual. They call them creative geniuses, but they call them borderline crazy, right? Because they're willing to test certain limits and kind of break certain barriers.
Find a place to crash. And back in those days, the best people to know were strippers because they were the ones that were empathetic, you know, to your needs.
What's up?
Once on stage, the band served up bludgeoning riffs, and Axl supplied the menacing lyrics. The product of an abusive household, Rose was an explosive frontman who used his songs to tackle his demons.
As volatile as he is, all the things that you might find complicated or difficult about Axl is what fuels him to be such an amazing performer and such an amazing songwriter.
You know, it's like I have to like balance out, you know, when can I destroy everything around me to when I have to be nice to everybody.
Axl's volatility was both a blessing and a curse. By early '86, Guns N' Roses were the hottest band in L.A. But record labels wouldn't touch them.
Nobody wanted to sign us. I mean, even though the people that wanted to sign us, they didn't want to deal with us. Nobody wanted to produce us. Nobody wanted to manage us. And, you know, the club owners were scared of us.
Guns N' Roses were a powder keg that could blow at any moment. But in the spring of '86, Geffen Records exec Tom Zutaut saw the band at an LA club and thought their hard rock sound was worth almost any headache.
I basically went to David Geffen and I said, I just saw the biggest rock and roll band in the world. They're going to sell more records than any band except for maybe Led Zeppelin and the Rolling Stones.
Guns N' Roses signed a record deal with Geffen, but few believed they were destined to redefine rock and roll or even survive at all. Next.
Bro, Axl Rose, unique sound, right? Very unique.
Sweet Success, Guns N' Roses style.
There were photo sessions when Slash literally was propped up so he wouldn't fall down for the
news.
Yeah. Let's get to it.
By the summer of 1986, Guns N' Roses had navigated the thicket of Hollywood hair metal to bag a multi-album deal with Geffen Records.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But the label was worried that their explosive investment could combust at any moment.
Well, I was worried about them surviving because you can't tell junkies or drug addicts to stop taking drugs. They probably laughed when I said, guys, I mean, be careful, you know, you're going to be the biggest rock and roll band in the world. You don't need to destroy it with this crap.
You always kind of thought that, you know, there would be like the explosion and it would all be over, or one of them would die, or something would happen.
Oh, yeah. We were the bad boys.
In August of '86, Geffen got Guns into the studio. But the band never allowed a rigid recording schedule to cramp their untamed style.
On any given night, terrorizing Hollywood. Every morning we'd have to get up and somehow manage to be at the studio by 12.
They came in many times well hungover.
But amid all the chaos, Guns N' Roses were about to make musical history. One of the songs that emerged in those early sessions was a disarmingly sensitive ballad called Sweet Child of Mine. Ironically, Slash came up with its classic opening riff as a joke.
We were rehearsing on Guitar Center, and then he started playing like a circus kind of thing. You know? And I was like, dude, play that again.
What started out as a joke guitar riff for me turned into a huge anthem for Axl as far as that relationship that he was in at the time. So it was a very heartfelt moment in his life.
Axl's unusually affectionate lyrics were penned as a love letter to his girlfriend, Erin Everly, with whom he had had a tumultuous 5-year relationship.
When it was good, it was good. And when it was bad, it was horrible. There was a lot of turmoil between those two. And that's all I want to say.
Erin was a very nice girl. She was cute as could be. She was just the opposite as Axl. But it also shows a side of Axl, Sweet Child of Mine, that you wouldn't necessarily, when you hear all these nasty things about him.
But Sweet Child was a rare track of tenderness on an album dominated by incendiary anthems like Welcome to the Jungle. And when Appetite for Destruction was released in July of '87, it bombarded fans with a brutal sonic diary of 5 musicians hanging on the edge by a thread.
Woo.
They were, you know, they were living.
So who was penning a lot of these records? That's what we got to ask, okay? We had Slash come up with that riff for the early banger, the early hit, but who was penning a lot of the records? Was it Axl Rose, or were they collectively kind of writing some of the hits that they had released? Let me know if you know this in the comment section down below. Of course, this documentary will probably reveal some detail on that line, but yeah, let's get some insight if you know on that.
You know, hand to mouth, and they were just all about the rock and the girls and the drinks.
Yeah,
and
let's
that's what
turn
they're
up.
saying about it.
Yeah.
That's what they did.
So,
and they lived it.
See, that's what I was finna say. I feel like a lot of the songs detailed the lifestyle, maybe the rambunctiousness, the way they played, the way they presented themselves, was they was living it every day. So it was authentically themselves. You can't knock that. Honestly, authenticity always wins. It always wins, and it'll always shine through. The facades will decay, they will fade away. Authenticity always remains. Attaboy.
It's a
Attaboy, Axl.
Storybook of everything that Axl and the band was going through from, say, the beginning of the 80s all the way up until the record was finished.
In August of '87, Guns hit the road for a world tour to support the album, taking their never-ending Hollywood party to inebriated extremes around the globe.
We're just a bunch of crazy kids that have just been given the key to every city in the world.
Yeah, let's get it. Let's get it.
There were photo sessions when Slash literally was propped up, you know, the head up and somebody behind him, you know, to hold him up so he wouldn't fall down for the photo session.
That boy lit.
Slash is a very dedicated player. He would go and throw up behind the amps, come back out and keep playing. Smoke on stage, and his cigarette would drop down in between his pants and his stomach. And I'm sitting there watching him going, you know, dude, you're burning up. And he's just doing this solo in pain.
The Guns' outrageous antics and graphic lyrics.
Hey, that's dedication right there. Shout out to Slash.
Were infuriating parents, but delighting fans.
Woo!
And in July of '88, Appetite for Destruction climbed to #1 on the charts.
It was the right band at the right time with the right message, and it just happened to hit the youth of America in a certain way that everybody related to it, which is great.
But just as the band reached multi-platinum heights, tragedy brought them crashing back to earth. On August 20th, 1988, during the Guns set at the Monsters of Rock Festival in Donington, England, 2 fans were crushed and killed by the frenzied audience.
And so we finished the gig. Our manager didn't tell us about it, so we met up at a pub later on, and I found him in the bar sort of crying, and he told me about that. And it's like, that was when the reality kicked in, that you can get to this all-time high, something that you can't compare to anything, and then have it go to an all-time low.
It really screws with your head. He drove to the show with his friends. They were having a good time. They got out of their car. They walked into the gig, and he didn't walk out.
The deaths at Donington added fuel to a growing critical fire against the band, and to the sentiment that GNR were headed for premature destruction. Next, the Guns turn on... By the end of 1988, Guns N' Roses had launched a multi-platinum blast of dirt and grime onto the airbrushed face of rock and roll. Just 1 year after the release of their debut album, they were one of the most popular bands in the world.
They were the baddest thing on the block at the time.
They had a certain genuineness to them that I think people really attached themselves to. They were what they were, and what you saw is what you got.
I had no expectations for it to be such a global event, you know?
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
In November of '88, Guns released the EP GNR Lies, a collection that included 4 new tracks knocked out in a single inspired studio session.
Was a time when I wasn't sure, but you set my mind at ease.
Driven by the top 10 ballad Patience, the record would go on to sell 2 million copies.
Basically, it was a live session. I recorded everybody in the same room and in a circle, and they all played together, and it was pretty magical.
We did the Lies record, and it was like a real easy, quick thing to do, which was really successful, which was sort of a shock. 1 day's work, and sells like all these copies.
Despite their success, controversy constantly threatened to disarm the young Guns. Another of the tracks on GNR Lives was One in a Million, a divisive tune with racially charged lyrics that put the band under fire.
The word was used on the record, but that didn't necessarily mean all black people. It just, it meant basically lowlifes, people that were like stealing, to supply their drug habits.
It hit home with me on a bad level because I'm half black for one. So you start saying the word around me, and it's very unsettling.
But the storm of protest only fueled album sales. And in February of '89, as GNR Lies joined Appetite for Destruction in the top 5, the band decided to take a break from recording and the road. But their downtime quickly became an endless succession of wanton days and wasted nights.
That's where we really went downhill. That's where I got lost, Izzy got lost, Steven got lost, Duff even got lost, and Axl disappeared somewhere.
Slash didn't know how to entertain himself unless he was on stage or going to a gig or doing something. So what did he do? Wake up, drink, and drink more?
I love Slash to death, but his drug abuse was out of control. Steven's drug abuse was out of control. Duff's drinking, and Axl's, wild-eyed vision of reality was out of control.
In October of '89, Guns got an offer to open 4 shows for the Rolling Stones in L.A. It seemed the perfect opportunity to bring the band back together. But on opening night, Axl made a shocking announcement on stage.
He implied if certain members don't stop dancing with Mr. Brownstone, meaning Slash and drugs, the band was over.
They all were messing around with heroin, but somebody had a real big problem, and if they didn't stop doing it, that was the end of Guns N' Roses.
I know it was directed at me because I was all strung out at the time. That was one of the things that probably made me hate Axl more than anything. Something I probably never, ever forgave him for without really even thinking about it.
At the time, the tirade seemed to galvanize the band. In the spring of '90, Guns entered the studio to begin work on their most elaborate project yet. A double album of all new material.
We all managed to sort of straighten ourselves out, with the exception of Steven. Steven was so locked up that he just couldn't get it together.
He was so messed up with junk that he couldn't pull off the tracks.
The band had lofty
Steven looked like
ambitions
he got
for
the
the
most lit. I ain't gonna lie to you. Steven looked like he was lit all the time. But to this day, even seeing him in this documentary as he speaks, he looked like he was turned. He got lit. Because they speak about Slash being such an abuser, but as he speaks, he can kind of still speak eloquently in some shape, form, or fashion.
The new album, but Adler's debilitating heroin addiction made him a liability in the studio, and the sessions came to a grinding halt.
He couldn't play. He would lie to us, and we'd go over to his place and find behind the toilet and find stuff underneath the sink.
He couldn't leave his drugs, but there's other things beside the band that he was involved in with his drugs that have been very dangerous and scary, and that I want nothing to do with them.
In July of 1990, frustrated by their lack of progress, the band fired Steven Adler, only worsening the drummer's depression and drug abuse. He would eventually suffer a cocaine-induced stroke.
I did everything I possibly could to try and kill myself. I had nothing left for him. I mean, everybody that I knew, that I thought were my friends, took everything they could from me and disappeared. I would drink a whole bottle of vodka, just down it, right before the sun was coming up so I could pass out.
As Steven spun into a deadly narcotic abyss, the band recruited...
When it gets that bad, man, you need help. You need help. But that's the thing. He probably talking about, man, I have friends in my life. They left me. They deserted me. But they probably try to get your help, but you refused it, But you're just in such a state. You're probably not going to realize that. But at that point, that's crazy, man. When people get to that point, you wonder what their day-to-day looks like. They're probably not being able to maintain a whole day those folks just need help. They don't understand they need help. So if you're family, friends, you just gotta, kind of just take the priority of getting them some assistance, man, because that's a crazy point to be at.
Former Cult drummer Matt Sorum. And in September of '90, Guns began laying down the tracks that would make up the epic double album, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2.
I just want to bury Appetite. I don't want to live my life through that one album. I have to bury it. So rather than just throwing a bunch of songs together that we think are fun, we're going over it, with a fine-tooth comb.
His creative idea of moving forward was, we can't remake Appetite. The next record has to be in another direction.
But the impoverished gang of 5 who'd lived through the turmoil that inspired Appetite for Destruction had drifted apart. And from the start, sessions were literally phoned in.
Slash and I do a lot of our communication by phone. What do you think about the end note in this? Okay, we'll change that to this. Hold this note a little bit longer, da-da.
It was impossible to get us into one room, all of us, at one time.
It was very dark, and there was a lot of just toxic sort of a feeling in the room, and sightings of Axl Rose were few and far between.
Use Your Illusions was all over the place. It was sort of like the Guns N' Roses version of the White Album, so to speak. Maybe not quite as good, but it was like all this material coming from all different directions.
Despite all the turmoil, Guns' double album was destined to become a phenomenal success. Few could have guessed that it would also serve as the band's last artistic gasp. Next, music continues. By early 1991, Guns N' Roses were both finishing up their ambitious double album and plotting a massive world tour. But as they hit the road, concert crowds discovered that the look of the band had drastically changed.
We had a horn section and pianos and all this other kind of crap, which we didn't necessarily want as a band, but it's something that Axl still wanted.
I remember feeling a bit like I didn't really sign up for this. I was kind of hoping to join a badass rock and roll band. What's with the piano?
He's still making bangers, though.
It just got bloated. It's plain and simple.
Always the dominant Guns man, Axl Rose now seemed hell-bent on seizing control of the band. Soon after the tour began, he gave Slash, Izzy, and Duff an ultimatum. Sign over the rights to the name Guns N' Roses, or the group would be history.
In his mind, the name belonged to him. And if something disintegrated, he wanted to ensure Guns N' Roses' ultimate survival, even if this version of the band broke up.
You know what's crazy about being a lead singer? You hold so much control, right? Because you're the voice. Literally, like, you can always replace the band and the other instruments. Maybe they may not play as well, but, as you grow as an artist, your albums don't really necessarily need to sound the same. They usually don't. So you can get other instrumentation. The voice is always going to be a voice, though. That's the thing. Because I just did a reaction to the Journey documentary, right? And the thing with Steve Perry is, like, he had so much control because he was the sound. He's the voice, right? And really, people will follow the voice. So it's crazy how much weight they hold or how much pull they have in situations like this. Because you can always get a player, but you can't recreate someone's voice.
If we didn't sign it, the band was going to break up right then and there. So we just did what we've always done and just kept the thing going.
But as tensions mounted within the group, the strain began to show on stage. In July of '91, a concert in St. Louis spun out of control after Axl dove into the crowd and tried to grab a camera from an overeager fan.
I jumped off stage, and yeah, things went haywire after that. And maybe I could have handled it better or whatever, but no one was really handling anything at that point. So I took it into my own hands with what I could do.
Within minutes, tens of thousands of people were enveloped in chaos.
The whole place just collectively destroyed everything.
He incited a riot.
It was one of the scariest things I've ever seen. We were in the dressing room, and I remember opening the door and be like, people on stretchers, and they were all bloody, and it was like gnarly.
Throwing chairs.
I tell the driver just to get the quickest way out to the state line and get us out. And we drove, here's the biggest band in the world laying down in the back of the van to escape arrest to get and drive to Chicago. It was insane.
Did they make it, though? That's the question.
As the tour rolled on, fans could never be sure what they would get from the Guns. Sometimes Axl walked off stage, or he didn't show up at all. But at other gigs, he delivered mesmerizing performances that all but overpowered the crowd.
He had that way of talking to the audience and speaking his mind that they could relate to, but he also had this swagger, like a lizard. And the girls loved that.
I cannot recall one show I've seen that he didn't give me goosebumps.
He was like the greatest rock and roll frontman ever.
Guns concerts have become larger-than-life spectacles. But even that could not prepare them for the hysteria that greeted the release of their long-awaited double album.
There has been nothing like the anticipation of Use Your Illusions ever. They sound scanned 1,600,000 records the first week and was just this juggernaut that had not been seen since the Beatles, really.
Released in September '91, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 was an imperfect masterpiece, running the gamut from grandly epic ballads to down and dirty rock.
Can't lie to you, the versatility is there. The sound range is just, the range is phenomenal, right? Wouldn't y'all agree? Seems like they were able to kind of dabble in different types of sounds.
It just had a lot of everything, and it was the good, the bad, and the ugly of Guns N' Roses.
This was when we were going to pull all the stops, everything we could think of to do that we wanted to do, we were going to do.
Guns were both more popular and more divided than ever. As the group began shooting videos for the new album, Axl outlined elaborate, big-budget visions with minimal input from the rest of the band.
Everything had to be bigger and better and more grander and more majestic and more money, and he had to splash it, and he did.
For me, the biggest change in Guns N' Roses, I think, was the video when Axl decided that they needed an aircraft carrier, and he's going to jump over an aircraft carrier and swim with dolphins. Okay, that was the part that I said, you know what, that's not so street.
And that's where we just sort of completely separated. This group of guys is here, and this other guy's on this page.
By November of '91, Izzy Stradlin had had enough of Axl's iron fist. Just as Guns was amping up for another tour, the newly sober guitarist abruptly quit the group.
Izzy felt dictated to and quit,
Everybody wished they could go with him, but then you have your balancing, your livelihood with, do I put up with this crowd?
Just weeks before Guns was to hit the road in December '91, LA guitarist Gilby Clarke stepped into Izzy's shoes. He knew he wouldn't be filling them for long.
It's just, here, learn the songs, play the songs, here's your paycheck. I knew from day one that it could end tomorrow,
The Guns got on the road, but from the beginning, the band had little contact with Axl off stage, and even less of a clue when he might turn up for gigs.
It was hard, so we had a lot of canceled gigs. We had a lot of gigs where we almost didn't play. We had a lot of walking off the stage and all was said and it was all very trying,
For what though? What's the purpose? What's the reason of being the lead singer that just shows up when he wants to, bad business? Like, what is the point in that? If there's some method to the madness, please let me know, but I don't understand it.
I would be like, come on, you guys. I mean, we got to deal with this. Let's be a band. And every time I'd go out to deal with Axl, I'd turn around and they'd all gone the other way. Like, dudes, you said you were backing me up.
We would go down to the show, and you have a cocktail at the show, you have another cocktail. And by the time he'd show up, we were hammered, from sitting and drinking so much.
And soon the heavy drinking and drug abuse began taking a physical toll on the band.
I got a phone call at 5:30, 6 a.m. at my room from the front desk saying, Mr. Reese, one of your band members is passed out in front of an elevator on the 6th or 5th floor. So I throw on some pads, jump, run out my room, and Slash is dead. I mean, dead, blue dead. He had no pulse. Paramedics show up, bam, the adrenaline right into his heart.
Slash had dodged a bullet, but Duff was killing himself slowly with booze.
Duff was in terrible shape. He could barely speak.
I'd be on stage and I'd hear, when I look over and Duff would be laid out. His bass guitar on the stage and him passed out.
Duff.
In the summer of '92, despite the offstage fireworks, Guns N' Roses joined Metallica for a stadium concert tour. But on August 8th, at a gig in Montreal, Metallica frontman James Hetfield was severely burned in a bizarre pyrotechnic accident, leaving the Guns to deal with an incendiary crowd.
Axl could have probably saved the day, but his voice was messed up.
He just couldn't hear himself and chose to leave.
I went out to the stage and, they're shredding the place. I saw bonfires, and this is an enclosed stadium. And they just looted everything. There were cop cars overturned. And, I've never seen anything like that. That was my first riot.
That was a really sort of embarrassing moment for everybody. Because it was like, we have no control over this,
The Guns soldiered on until July of '93. Their final performance was for 70,000 fans in Buenos Aires, Argentina. It was the last the world would see of the original band. Next, the Guns
was going to be over.
When Behind the Music continues. On July 17th, 1993, Guns N' Roses completed a 2.5-year tour that was the longest in rock history.
What?
But as the band touched down in Los Angeles, their future was more uncertain.
2.5 years? What? I've never heard of that before. Damn. Whoa. You are literally living on the road, bruh. 2.5 years? I'm flabbergasted, bro. My mind is blown. Huh? So you're telling me that for 2.5 years they were just touring city to city, doing shows, turning up, and they survived that 2.5 years. Alcohol and drug abuse. Whoa. I respect that, but that's really rock star lifestyle. Might not make it. 1,000%.
Than ever.
Even though the family was dysfunctional, they were still family on the road.
Nobody wanted to come home. You know, nobody really wanted to end because I think everybody in the back of their mind thought that it was going to be over.
In November of '93, Guns released a collection of cover tunes called The Spaghetti Incident. But as they began working on a new album of original material in early '94, Axl's dominating demeanor was stifling the rest of the band.
It's not brain surgery. I mean, I've said it a million times. Dude, what are you doing over there? Who are you, Zubin Mehta, doing a 72-piece, orchestral masterpiece?
In December of '94, GNR managed to cobble together a cover of the Rolling Stones' Sympathy for the Devil for a movie soundtrack. It would prove a sonic farewell for Matt, Slash, Duff, and Axl.
That's the sound of the band breaking up right there.
Slash and Duff and them had much less patience for eating the amount of they had to eat to keep everything going.
A band is a marriage, and they were bound for divorce court.
Every band is in due time.
In October of '96, Slash finally quit the Guns, and Matt Sorum and Duff McKagan soon followed suit. In the aftermath, Axl virtually disappeared for half a decade, attempting to reinvent Guns N' Roses with a brand new cast.
This has taken a long time. Yeah, but it's also how do you rebuild something that got so big and replace virtually every person on the crew, every single thing.
Axl took his new Guns on the road in 2002, but the North American tour was fraught with cancellations and unraveled after only 15 shows. As for the new album, that's been in the works for nearly a decade.
Well, I think the guy has really fought hard to make Guns N' Roses relevant to whatever was going on. But he's waited so long, whatever was going on has changed a few times. I think he just, in his head, wants to achieve a sort of mythic perfection that may be impossible.
Axl's album, Chinese Democracy, is finally slated for release in November of 2004. As for Slash, Duff, and Matt Sorum, they formed the supergroup Velvet Revolver, with former Stone Temple Pilots frontman Scott Weiland. In June of 2004, they released their debut album, Contraband, touted by critics as a scathing blast of righteous rock.
See, it looks like at this point in time they wanted to get back to the sound they like. This is more so along the lines of, kind of earlier Guns N' Roses probably. So the more raw, gritty, the rawness, So I'm sure they're kind of happy. This is their pocket,
I'm out on the road, I'm touring, I'm on stage. Got some of the greatest musicians around me, and that's the most important thing.
I've been in enough bands and done enough sessions and played enough gigs. After all these years now, I do understand what it is. And to finally have that come around a second time is a real blessing.
Despite these separate projects, the public's hunger for the original Guns remains insatiable. In April of 2004, a greatest hits collection debuted at number 3 on the charts, but a full-scale reunion seems highly unlikely.
No matter how much money they stick in our face, there's no reason for us to get together to do anything unless we have some sort of mutual understanding or respect. And we're way, way far from that, so I don't see it anytime in the foreseeable future.
Whatever the future holds, the band's legacy will live on. For 6 unforgettable years, they pillaged the music world and remade rock and roll in their own decadent image.
That was a great experience, a great time. Will it ever be the same again? No, never, never. That kind of will never happen again.
That right there is Guns N' Roses. VH1 behind the music, man. You can't recreate that. That's a once in a lifetime type of thing. Like, so be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know y'all's thoughts on that one in the comment section below. That one, heater. You know, it didn't really go into deep detail. So obviously, if you can care to elaborate in the comment section below, you know, expound upon the story, feel free to. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, follow me on Instagram, Twitter at FortWorthFabian. You know, I definitely want to do more documentary style content. So if you have recommendations, put them in the comment section below, as well as additional maybe Guns N' Roses song recommendations. May start doing some of those as well. So like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, FortWorthFabian. It's the road to $1 million, man. Peace, love, prosperity. We'll catch you guys in the next video, man. We out.